All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another live stream, the first live stream of 2025. It's hard to believe that we are already in 2025, and I think this begins the fourth year of streaming for me, which is strange to think about. Today's stream is going to be a little bit different in the sense that most of our streams cover some sort of artificial intelligence or machine learning sort of thing. Today, I am taking a different pivot to something else, and I'm hoping in the long term I might be able to circle it back and tie it all together with AI/ML. But so what I'm going to be sharing here today is my attempt to get into learning Swift. And so, if you're not familiar with what Swift is, so Swift is a programming language created and maintained by Apple about a decade ago. They specifically designed it to replace, I think it was called Objective C, for developing specifically apps for like Apple products, so like iPhone apps, Apple Watch apps, etc. And I've always been a big fan of Apple's products for a long time, and I've always wanted to get into app development. I've just never had a particular reason to. And so my motivation for all these streams is generally speaking to be able to apply something that I'm learning or potentially apply something that I'm teaching here to something within my day job as a machine learning engineer. That is actually not the case for this one. This is actually purely personally motivated. So, like I said, there are a number of reasons why I want to get into app development, but more recently, the specific reason I'm going for app development right now is it's going to sound super funky. So I've recently started doing power yoga at a place in town called the Yoga Lab, and they've been a really great place to join. It's been a really great workout experience. Everybody there is super friendly, etc. They intentionally, whenever you go into their studio for practice, ask you to leave your phone out in like the storage area, and I understand why. It's because they want to keep people in the flow and keep people in the practice. However, the thing that I've noticed is that I join like 10 to 15 minutes early to get a good spot in the studio, which means I'm sitting there for 10 to 15 minutes with not a whole lot to do, but I do have my Apple Watch on. So I'm considering, well, not considering, I'm actually going to make an Apple Watch app. It's going to be a really simple one that's going to just be like a data science flashcards app. And so that way, when I'm sitting there in the studio doing nothing, I can at least be on my watch learning about different various data science concepts on my watch. So anyway, that's my personal motivation here. Yeah, so we'll go ahead. So today's motivation, like how we're going to approach today is being a machine learning developer or being a Python developer. What is the most efficient way to approach a new technology like this? And so that's the lens that I'm coming at it from. So if you are somebody who is newer to development or is not currently a developer, this might be a bit of a struggle to follow along with. I'll try to make this as simple as possible as I draw the juxtapositions between the two. We're definitely not building out like a full app or anything today. I'm just going to give today a very high level introduction to what Swift is, what Xcode is, and how we might be applying these to future streams. So I haven't necessarily committed because I do want to stick with the AI/ML content, but I thought today would just be a fun one to cover Swift. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here. And so so just for context, I am working on a MacBook here. And the reason that is important to understand is, for better or worse, the only way that you can really do effective development in Xcode is on a MacBook. There is an app, well, I'll get to it in a little bit, but there is an app that you can kind of do development on an iPad a little bit, but there is no Windows for Xcode. Xcode for Windows. There's no Xcode for Linux. And yeah, so that's a little bit of a disappointment. And additionally, I don't even know why I'm sharing my screen still. Additionally, you can't necessarily code out of VS Code, or another IDE like IntelliJ or something like that, and you'll quickly see why. In fact, so let's go ahead and jump into it. So the way that we build these Swift applications is using the application called Xcode. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Xcode. I already have it installed. If you don't have it installed, you will have to go to the Mac App Store and get that installed. It's all free. Now, if you do want to publish out to the App Store, I believe you do have to spend $100 a year on like having like a developer license. But we're not even going to get to that today. What I just want to cover is just like a high-level introduction to what Xcode is and how we interact with Swift here, and why we can only really do this stuff in Xcode. So, and quirks along the way that I'm still kind of working on myself. All right, so when we get into Xcode here, we're greeted with a screen. We could open up an existing project, or we can begin a new project. I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. And you can see here, we can, it gives us a number of templates that we can begin with, that we can, for things that we want to build. So if we want to build like an iOS app, Mac OS app, watchOS app, etc. Excuse me, I'm going to keep things simple. I'm going to do an iOS app here. And so I'm just going to click next. And it's going to just ask for some basic information here. Now, none of this is particularly important. So if you're trying to follow along here and wondering how to fill these out, I would basically just leave all of them as default, all these fields. You will see that my organization identifier is already populating appropriately here for myself. You can, again, this could be whatever you want it to be. And I'm just going to call this test, just because we're just, exploring this in a test capacity. And so it's going to ask me to create a Git repo on my Mac here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll just delete this out later. All right, and so now we're in Xcode. Let's go ahead and blow this up. Let's go ahead and make this bigger. And so the first thing that you'll notice here is, I wonder if I can make this bigger. I want to make the whole UI bigger. Can I make the whole UI bigger? View, that way y'all can see it better. Navigators, view. Is there a view thing? Okay, maybe not. So unfortunately, you might just have to, hopefully you're on a large enough screen you can see this all right. So you can see here, what it did was it created a number of a number of default files that are created whenever you create an app for the first time. So this is our file navigation off here on the left. This is rather similar to what you might see in something like VS Code or IntelliJ. But you'll begin to see it right away here. So we have our typical coding view. So this is nothing too familiar for people who already write code. Looks like I can blow up this part, but I can't blow up the other part. And then here is where Xcode really, this is why you really got to use Xcode. It's for this preview portion on the right here. Now, I see that my face is in the way. I wonder if I can move myself. That didn't really help out too much. But off here on the right, you'll see that there is this content view along with a fake iPhone 16 Pro just running here. And it's actually displaying our code here. So this is some starter code that Xcode created for us when we created the project. Now, a couple things I want to point out here about this starter code. So again, I am a Python developer. I have experience with Java. I have experience with SQL. I'm not really an HTML or JavaScript guy, so not super familiar with the syntax there, but the syntax here is not wildly different than something like Python. So you'll see that we're still importing things just like we import things in Python. So we're importing Swift UI here. And then so just for context, so there's actually Swift and Swift UI. Like they're treated differently, but I think they're technically kind of the same concept, but or at least same in how they manifest. But Swift UI, as the name implies, is really the specific set of code that actually displays the user interface elements on the application screen, whereas Swift, like straight Swift, is more like doing that backend sort of stuff. And that's where things start to get interesting here, is when you start to combine like standard Swift code with Swift UI code. It's interesting to see how Apple has manifested all these things. It's different than what I'm used to in Python, and there's a little bit of a learning curve. It's not too bad, and I'll talk a little bit more about how I approach the learning here in a little bit. Just a couple of things to note here, just within this structure. So you'll see here on line 10 that we have this thing called a struct. Now, to be completely honest, I'm not 100% sure how to define a struct in terms of Python language. The closest correlate that I could come to understanding was like a struct is very much similar to like a pydantic data structure. However, obviously a pydantic data structure in Python, that's really for, data structures and not really user interface views here. But so that's the way that Apple manages their stuff, it appears, is that you have to have a struct that is a view of a type of a view. So you'll see here that the way the syntax kind of works, and I'm still not 100% familiar with the syntax, but the way it works is with some of these variables, or these variable types, I believe you put the type in front, or yeah, like, well, like the variable, or I guess the object type you want here, and then like the data struct, or what is the word I'm trying to say here? It's like the property of like what this thing is supposed to be. So this thing is a view. This variable body here is also a view. Don't ask me what sum means. I read it up. I didn't really understand it. But you'll see here, then we have a VStack. And so there's actually three different kinds of stacks here that Swift UI supports. So there's VStack, HStack, and ZStack. And if you're, what these are basically do is they're containers to help organize your user interface elements in a certain way. So as VStack, as the V implies, this is a vertical stack. So this is going up and down. HStack would be a horizontal stack, so that's going left and right. And then ZStack, that's a depth. So that is something more in front versus more behind, if you will. So you can see here, it just created a very simple VStack. So we have a simple image. So it appears that Apple offers a number of default sort of images that you can use, or icons. So you can see here, if you just plug in like the text globe here, then it will populate the globe over here. Now, one thing I do want to point out as a gotcha, because this is something that I'm kind of bad about in Python, is I prefer in Python to work with single quotes whenever I'm working with text or strings or anything like that. Swift is extremely opinionated and pretty much requires double quotes all the time. So you can see here that globe wrapped in double quotes, and the text here of hello world is wrapped in double quotes. But then the cool thing though is that, like, let's say I wanted to add some modifiers to this text and I want to make it bigger or whatever. This is like the way that it works is that you just add a new line and then you hit a dot, and then you see like all these different options that we can start adding in here. And there are so many, like, I have not even started to delve into all these options, but like, so if we just say, let's do italic right here. So you should see off on the right here that the preview has been updated to where the words are italicized now. And then you can do, you can add even more modifiers to this. So you could say font is caption. So just FYI, this is something I also should have mentioned. You might have noticed that I do have like a tab autocomplete here. This is actually GitHub Copilot. GitHub Copilot does work with Xcode. However, it's in more of a limited capacity. So it's limited to just like doing tab autocompletes. It's not like VS Code where you can, like in VS Code, I could highlight this, hit Command I, and then ask, what is this code doing? There is no sort of equivalent for that here in Xcode, unfortunately. So what I have to do is I actually do have ChatGPT installed on my machine, my Mac here. So if I hit Command Space, then I do get the ChatGPT interface. So that's my personal workaround. I do wish that they would add a more robust GitHub Copilot within Xcode. But anyway, so yeah, that's how you add certain elements. And then I mean, that's the kind of the basic thing there. Now, the thing that I would call out here is you'll notice that we started create a VStack with an image and a text. And the one thing that I've noticed is that when it comes to these user interface elements, when you're building like a holistic page, like actually, let me go to, I'm actually going to open up a test project that I was working on. This was a tutorial project that I was going through with the Swift UI tutorial. And I'll cover that here in a minute. So what do I want to show here? I want to show my views. I want to show my content view here. Okay, so this is my content view. So you can see here that the code for the content view is rather minimal. Now, it's taking the preview a little bit to get going here. So what I believe is actually going on here behind the scenes with this preview off on the right, and I apologize that my face is kind of blocking the bottom part here. I think that there's actually a true simulator that's being stood up here. So basically, like, imagine like a virtual iPhone is actually running on my computer right now, which is why it took a little bit to get going. But you can see here that the code here is rather minimal on what is being displayed here. So you might be wondering, well, where is all these other elements? Like, so here, let me move my face out of the way. So at the bottom of this particular user interface here, you can see that there's like a feature tab and a list tab. but like, where did this come from here? And so that's the other interesting thing about, well, two things. Number one is I found that you want to get your UI elements as granular as possible, meaning that you can see that there's actually quite a few files over here in the navigation. And so basically, like, anytime we created a new one new piece of a UI, we would build it as one file and then import it to be used elsewhere. So like, for example here, like this so one of the things that we created was a badge symbol. Let me move my face out of the way again. I need to figure that out better for the next time. So we have like a simple mountain shape here. That's just the badge symbol. And then so we used all these different things within Swift here to kind of be able to draw this out. And then to actually use it further as like a badge background, or I guess it's the badge, not the badge background, but we actually combine the badge background. So you can see here, this might be hard to tell, but this is the same. In fact, I'm going to pin this here so I can then show this in the symbol as well. Was it the symbol I was showing? Okay, yeah. So that's another thing I want to show here, or mention here, is whenever you swap between these files, if you don't pin the view here, it will just automatically jump back to whatever file you're working in right now. And there's some sort of bug going on here, which is, I don't know why my badge is not outlined right. But anyway, so if I go over to the badge symbol here, you can see that like the mountain here is basically the same thing that you're seeing here. It's just that I dropped the opacity. I made it less opaque. I made it more transparent, whatever that word is. And then copied that like 8 different times to make the sun-like logo. And so whenever, and that's the other interesting thing about Swift. Like, I'll call out here. So they provided some like sample JSON data here that I've just dropped into this resources folder. So the interesting thing here is I want to show where this is loaded. So you'll see here that it is loaded as this. Now, if you're a Python developer, this is going to be a little bit wonky to you because this is the model data file that we're working in, which is nested under this model directory, whereas our JSON data is housed in the resources directory. So it appears that wherever you put your files within a Swift or within a, I don't know if you want to call it a Swift project or an Xcode project, that it kind of just automatically knows that it's there, and you don't even need to specify like the file path. Now, don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure, but like that's what it appears to be, especially like whenever you look at, like we were just exploring some of these badge views. Like if I look at the badge symbol here, and how we are applying, oh wait, no, I want to do the badge itself. My apologies. So this is actually how we are doing or is it this one? No, it's this one here is actually how we're doing the taking that one symbol and like changing it 8 times. Actually, we first did a rotation thing over here, but you can see here when we import these things, it's not as if we're specifying the file directories here. So that was a big change to me, like, because I'm so used to if I'm working in this model data file over here and it's nested under this subdirectory, then I got to make reference to it over here in this other directory, and that does not appear to be the case with a Swift app. Now, the one thing that is still a little bit of a mystery to me is like that I've not gotten as far to figure out yet is how do I save data locally? Like let's say I'm building a running workout app and I want as a user, if I'm going off on a run and I'm not connected to the internet or whatever, then it locally saves my run to my iPhone, and then when I get back connected to a network, it pushes it up to a cloud or whatever. How do I save that data back locally into the iPhone? I don't know how to do that yet. I'm sure I'll figure that out at some point. But let me. So that is a very, very high level introduction to Swift. Now, I guess while I'm here, I do want to call out a couple other syntax things. So the way that you define a function, I think this is actually more similar to JavaScript. Again, I'm not a JavaScript developer. The way you define it is you use the func keyword. So that's going to be very similar like def in Python. DEF. You have the name. You have the what, and this is the part that kind of confuses me because this is not an input here, even though it kind of looks like it should be an input. This is the input right here within the parentheses, and then we are very similar to Python. We are producing this T object. Now I don't understand why this is here, like why this wasn't necessarily defined right here. So that is something that I need to figure out. Something that I think JavaScript does, but Python does not do, is that it does not, like within Swift here, when you set a variable, you actually set it as a constant or a true variable. And what I mean by that is, so you could see here that we have the keyword let. So let is the keyword that says, okay, this is going to be a constant variable. Whereas if we were to use the word var, the keyword var here, this would mean that this is a more dynamic variable, things that can be overridden and stuff. There is not necessarily an equivalent of that in Python. We kind of get around that or work our way through that by setting constant variables with all capital letters, but I don't think that actually does anything for Python. I think that's just a nice syntactical way for developers to understand, okay, this is a constant value that in Swift here that is explicitly noted. Another interesting thing here that I noticed, you might be wondering, well, what is this guard keyword doing? And the way that I understand the guard keyword is it's basically a very simple conditional if statement. There actually is a true if else, or elif. It's just that the way that I understand this thing is it basically says, or maybe it's even better to call this like a try catch block. But like it's basically saying, okay, make sure that this runs, and if it doesn't run, then do this, which is very similar to like a try catch in Python. I don't know, like, so whenever I asked ChatGPT why you would want to use this, they basically just said it was a simpler way of, instead of doing like a try catch or an if else. I personally think that's confusing, and I'm probably just going to stick with if else blocks. Yeah, and then there's a lot of other interesting things within Swift here. But let's talk about how I kind of have been approaching this from a learning perspective. So from a learning perspective, I started to go the route of a traditional course. Now, when I mean traditional course, I mean like an online Udemy-like course. Not necessarily Udemy, it could have been Coursera or whatever. The problem that I personally had with a course like that is it immediately started jumping into, okay, here's what a variable is, here's what a function is, here's what a for loop is, everything that you and I already know as Python developers. And so I didn't want to waste my time necessarily going through basically just rehashing material I already knew. So I decided I was going to just try delving in immediately, like with nothing. I knew that I had to open up Xcode and so I started to open up Xcode, and I started to get confused immediately, just because this whole Swift UI thing is very new to me. And I guess the other thing I should note about the Swift preview and why it doesn't necessarily work well with like VS Code is that you can actually do direct development from the UI here. And what I mean by that is, so like, let me unpin this. Let me go to my badge symbol here. If I were to come to here and then I were to like command click? Okay, maybe here, let me go back to my test project because I know I can do this on text. Okay, so you see we have our hello world over here. So actually you can see down here, this is going to be really hard to see. If we right now this play button is on, this is like the live preview mode. If you click this button here, now this looks very similar to what we were already looking at. However, you'll notice that like it's actually interactable now. So if I command click on here, you can see that it highlighted this little bit of thing. But if I option click on here, or is it command right click? I can never remember. I don't remember, but there is a way to actually like do a click here where it'll actually pop open a user interface sort of thing here that will allow you to directly alter the like what you're viewing on here within a user interface, and then it'll update the code appropriately to match here. So that's that's really nice about Swift. And then the other thing about like the Swift preview here is, like I noted, is we're using an iPhone 16 Pro here as like our default template. However, if you come down here, you can actually update this to like I'll just select like the iPad, for example. So Now, like I said, this is starting a simulator in the background, so it actually does take like a minute or two to get the simulator going, especially given that I've not tested out an iPad yet, so it's still loading. We'll give it another second or so here, but you should see this interface on the right here turn. Oh, there we go. It turned into an iPad now, and so then you can even set it with the settings here to say, you know, I want this to be a landscape or landscape left or a landscape right. Now there or portrait or anything like that. So it's actually really nice to work with Swift in this way. I think it's and especially, so the other thing that I breezed over here is you might have noticed that we have this like preview hashtag down here, and then we have like this here. So you can actually do some really interesting thing with preview here. So let's say, let me go back to my other landmarks project that I was showing here. Let's say that I wanted to test out looking at the like the category row here for like like showing the different categories. Again, this is like one UI element that you probably saw that was a part of the larger UI space overall. You'll notice here that in the preview, the way that I'm able to actually like preview what this specific element is, I'm passing in very, very specific data into the preview here. That way I can get a general gist of what's going on. And you can, and this does not have to be consistent across files. So like, let's say, so like this is a category row. If I look at category item, I might want to test out something different here. So right now it's looking at Turtle Rock. So if I were to change the landmark to 1 here, then it's going to change that on the preview, or 2 or 3. It's going to just keep changing the preview. So that way you can really get really granular on what you like, each individual little element that you're trying to build, testing it out, and really like sufficiently doing an end-to-end test, if you will. All right, so what else do I want to show in here? The other thing that is a bit new to me is the asset library. It's a little bit confusing to me. I'm still kind of new to this. The way that I understand it is this is just a place where you upload your assets that you want to use here. So these were all just like default assets that Apple provided here. Now, the big question to me that, or an open question to me here is like, how should I be managing this with Git or not managing this with Git? And so like, I don't know if that makes any sense, because basically like you wouldn't want, like, let's say I was I don't know, some sort of app that had a ton of images. You wouldn't want to have something like 5 gigabytes worth of images in a Git repository. So I don't know how that works. Like if I was like some major app that had to do that, like, do I just reference them from someplace like S3? I don't know. So more to learn there. But yeah, so going into my learning process here. So like I said, I started with my simple test like space here. Quickly got confused with some of these UI elements that I'm not really familiar with. So what I personally did here is I actually went out to Apple's developer site here. And what I discovered is that like where people get tripped up on, like if you're like me and like you already have programming experience with something like Java or Python or something like that, people are not tripped up on baseline Swift. They get tripped up on Swift UI. And so this is what I would actually recommend if you are a Python developer like me and you want to get into Swift. Start with this tutorial because it's actually very clean and easy to walk through. So this is the same project that like we were working on. They provide you the project files, and then as you kind of continue to scroll down here, you can see it walks you through the steps, and then as it walks you through the steps, the preview over here on the side refreshes, so that way you can know at every step in the way that you are doing things correctly. So like it'll show and it'll even show preview up on the top right here. Let me move my face out of the way again. So it will. This is the new code that we added as part of the step. This is like the intuitive explanation of what's going on here, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can continue just going through these projects and then like learning about all these things. So, yeah, I'm trying to think, is there anything else I want to cover today? Wow, this is going to be a really short stream. So yeah, I mean, this is all I kind of wanted to cover today. Like, you know, because the temptation is like I said, is to jump into a course immediately, and there are pros and cons to that. The pro of a course is it's going to give you start to finish everything you need. The con is that it might give you too much. I think about whenever, so I actually started coding on Java, and the very first course that I took was this course on Udemy that was like a 65-hour course. And why the heck, I actually did watch all 65 hours, but in retrospect, I maybe retained and used maybe 2 hours worth of that content. And so it just wasn't a good use of my time. And then especially when I think about like if you were to take like a formal course at like a college or university, then you have the extra upfront of, well, now I need to go apply for this college. I need to apply for this course. And then hopefully maybe in like September or something, when the new fall semester kicks off, then I can start taking this course. And those are those are the barriers I'm just trying to get around. And so that's where using things like ChatGPT or other large language models, and then just asking very naive questions to can go a long way, especially if you already have some base level starting point. So, yeah. So learning new technology is easier than ever these days with all these different things. And kudos to Apple here. I mean, Apple is highly incentivized to have you be a good Swift developer. Why? Because if you develop a good app, then they get a cut of that share. So I think that's why they have really good tutorials. Like I said, if you do want to go and learn more about Swift, because I'm not like, if we do revisit Swift in one of these streams, it's going to be more intentional, and like intentional in the sense that like we're going to be doing something specific with maybe MLX. If you recall, MLX is Apple's means of running large language models on Apple hardware. I'm not going to do another Swift, like a general Swift tutorial. There's no sense in me kind of reinventing the wheel there. So, yeah, I think that's all I wanted to cover today. Like I said, short stream today. I'll hang on here for a few more seconds to see if there's any other questions. Like I said, we will be getting back to straight AIML content before too long. It's just that like this is what I've been focused on the last couple in my personal time, the last couple days and weeks. Just thought it was interesting, and I like getting back up in front of the camera as often as I can, just to keep my skills fresh in terms of presenting stuff here. All right, I don't see any questions or anything, so we'll call it here. Hope you all have a good weekend, and I will see you in the next one.